Hello, and welcome to the Special Response Diver Podcast. I'm Jordan Harvell, your host, and I am so excited that you are here. I'm excited because today we're going to bring you a bonus episode, and we're going to talk about how to talk about a dive team. We want to give you the tools in this to equip you to be able to talk to the brass, talk to those people in leadership over you that are going to kind of be the judge, jury, and executioner on whether this thing you want to start a dive team lives or dies. And that's a huge challenge, even for existing dive teams, how to talk to the leadership over them. And so I just want to give you a little insight on some techniques and tactics that may work to help you out and get you really what you're ultimately trying to do, which is get the money, get the resources, get the personnel to create a dive team. So let's break this down. We're going to talk two strategies here. The first strategy is going to be for people who are starting a dive team. If this is you, you're saying, all right, I've got this idea. I want to get this team going, maybe because of your past experience or something that happened in your community, whether that's a major investigation, a drowning. You see the need for this team. And so you're trying to justify that to those people that are going to say, yes, we can fund this, we can support it. The other strategy that we're going to talk about is for those that already have an existing team, but are running into maybe a command change, leadership command change, or they're going to be having some budgetary constraints or changes. So we're going to talk about both of those. But the first one I want to talk to you about is those that are starting. If you are starting a dive team and you have this desire, then you have to, first, I would go back and listen to the previous episode that we talk about mission first, what you really need to get your ducks in a row so that you can say, here's a viable reason for this. This is why we need it. This is why our community needs it. And that's where I always err to. I always err to not so much on our department needs it, our team needs it, whatever you are, police, fire, private, communal, citywide department, could be Parks and Rec or Water and Sewer. There's all kinds of different reasons you could have one. But if you're one of those that are saying, we need to justify this, it cannot be about you. It really can't. If you're trying to create a dive team just so you can have some cool patches and create a cool team, and which is fun, and I'm all for that. I love it. You can't do it for that reason when you're trying to justify, especially tax dollars. So go with it in the right mindset of this is going to serve the community because X. That's your formula. This is going to serve the community because X. What is that reason? We offer a dive capability to recover drowned victims. We could be in an area that has a lot of boat traffic. We could be in an area that has a lot of rivers, a place where there's a lot of a younger population that is jumping off of bridges and going out and camping, partying, whatever the reason, there is going to be that need. It could be we're in a high traffic area where we have a lot of vehicles that are going into the water. That's what we have in Miami-Dade County. You could also have the justification for the crime rate. You know that there's a lot of weapons-related crimes. Those weapons, if you don't have a high recovery rate of weapons in an area that has a lot of weapon-related crimes, then you need to start looking under some bridges. Get out there and start doing that. That's kind of your first step, is setting the grounds for why you need this team, and it is to serve the community, because that's not about you. It really isn't. And if you're starting a team that isn't about you and you're trying to use public-funded a team, then you need to have it serving the public. Another step you can take is to actually go out and do some dives and record some evidence. So if you are, like I was mentioning before, if you're in an area that has a lot of weapons-related crimes, then go and dive some bridges. See what you recover. Take a GoPro, go down there, film your experience, and then take that to the leadership and say, hey, I went out and on 3 different weekends, I did 3 different dives and I found this many guns or this many pieces of evidence that could have been used in a crime or whatever. You need to show physically what is possible with this team. And then you got to take it to the next level and have the heart of a teacher. That's the missing link in most dive teams. And this is going to cross over also to those teams that are existing and they're trying to talk to the leadership. But if you're trying to start, you got to teach them. You can't bash them over the head with data and statistics and all this other stuff. That's important. It has a place. but you've got to be able to present it in a way that says, this matters because, whatever the reason is, fill in the blank. And then when it comes to the really hard part of that conversation, because there's a lot of people, I don't know many people who would say that's a terrible idea, especially a police chief, a fire chief, even mayor, everybody loves the ability to do the impossible. And what goes in the water and can come out, that seems impossible. Let's just be honest. Most people are like that, it's gone forever. But to be able to show that it can be done everybody loves that. Now you got to fund it, which is the hard part of anything. You got to create that tool and the resource called money to be able to make this thing happen. And that's where people run into a wall, because you're like, well, this is a great idea. How much is this going to cost? Mistake number one that people make is silence. They have no idea. Or they pull a number out of thin air that doesn't relate to anything. We're going to need, $2 million. I'm just throwing out a number for argument. Now they're going, well, okay, I don't know if we need it that bad, or we can hire this county dive team that's next door to us, which is what happens across America. And so that may be a viable reason, because you just don't have the funding. But you can bring in more information that is compelling. For example, if you were trying to start a dive team with like 20 divers, stop it. Don't do that. That is way too many people. And you need to be able to think realistically. What do you actually need? A dive team can start with 2 people. We will preach that to the end of time. You only need a diver and a tender, both of them capable of diving, both of them capable of tending, and that's your dive team. If you can start with that, even on a volunteer level, to start showing and justifying why you need that, have them just pay your certification expenses, have them pay for air fills. If you already own your own gear, just start and show the justification for why you would need to fund this team on a regular basis. Now you can start to teach them, okay, here's why we do this type of search. Here's why. Invite them out onto a dive scene and show them. I mean, these are all things that can be done for almost free. The cost of an air fill, if you already own your own equipment, the cost of an air fill, you can go out and teach your leadership what it is that you want to do. If you're already a public safety diver, you have some level of training, give them an experience on land. Hey, I'll do this in your office. Here's a line. This is called an arc search. This is what we do, blah, 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 blah. And you just kind of bring them into the story that you're living. And that right there will start to build that relationship to they say, okay, these people kind of have a head on their shoulders and they actually have this desire to do something. What can we work out here? And when you're talking about the funding side, you've really got 3 parts. One, you've got the personnel funding. That could be through regular salary. That's either a pay bump or it's approval for some kind of overtime or approval for in lieu of days. So the pay bump could be, well, I hold this certification and I'm going to make more money whether I dive or not. I'm a big, controversially, I'm a big advocate for that not happening. I hate that idea because people get paid and drain resources and they don't do anything. They contribute nothing to the team. Unfortunately, a lot of fire departments get this because they have more people on a dive rescue team. And so they get the certification. They don't have a need for it. They never dive, but they drain resources from where it could be used better. The second part of that strategy here with the financial side is, people who are on the team and they're doing the work and they're getting the job done and they're actually contributing something. What you can have is you can say, I can just approve overtime. So that means you're kind of taking your own time to do this, but I'm not paying in excess for when you're not doing it. The department's just paying a little bit more. And so it's a win-win. Then you also have the in lieu of days. So you can say, I'm going to go and instead of working this day, if your schedule allows it, if your department allows it, then you can say, I'm going to take this day off because the next day I'm going to be doing some diving operations. I'm not a full-time diver. I'm not doing this all the time, only as needed. Or if there's a call out, then you kind of get like a bonus day off to do that. So instead of getting a paid day in addition or making extra money, you're just getting an extra day off, which, hey, I got a call out. I went and recovered this vehicle at 2:00 in the morning when I was supposed to be asleep. So I'm getting kind of like this bonus day off that I can do whatever I want with. Well, that's beneficial to everybody as well. The department's not paying more on a salary. They're not paying overtime. And you're getting an extra day almost like an extra vacation day. You're already doing your job. No recovery is going to, in a call out scenario, it isn't going to take you 8 hours. If it is, then let's talk. We need to resolve some other issues. But those are 3 options. So to go over those again, you're going to have your overtime pay that you can have. I'm a big supporter of that. If your department can't afford the overtime, you can do in lieu of days. So if you work one day, then you're going to take off another day, even if it's during your normal routine hours. Hey, I did something that's above and beyond what I'm normally doing. I have the certification and this unique skill to go underwater, do a recovery or an investigation. So you're going to get rewarded with an extra day off. And then the one I'm not a big fan of is the pay bump. Hey, you have the certification, whether you dive or not, you get a pay bump. I don't really like that. Unless you're a full-time diver, then you should be paid more than somebody else who's not doing the same skill you're doing. So those are 3 things you can talk through with your leadership on the financial compensation side. The next part of the financial part is the equipment. You're talking about your dive gear. If you own your own dive gear and you need better dive gear or you need more mission-specific dive gear, talk that through, but get an accurate number. Go out and do your shopping. Don't go to Amazon. Don't buy it cheap. Buy the right stuff from a reputable dive shop who can service the equipment. And what I would do is I would go in and say, hey, we need to get this kind of gear. Don't let them sell you on something. Do your research. Just tell them kind of what you want and get what's needed. Don't add a bunch of side scan sonars and underwater diver propulsion vehicles and a boat and a truck and a helicopter. You don't need that. Just get the basic equipment and include these things in additional. Do your total diving system that you need. Then you're going to go through and you're going to put in maintenance costs, annual, servicing, that kind of stuff. Then you need to put in your training. So you're going to have equipment, service, and training. Those 3 things are the staples to be able to have your dive team budget, in addition to whatever compensation is agreed upon for the person. So those 2 items right there, that's it. That's all you need. You can start your dive team with minimal numbers of people, minimal numbers financially, and minimal time to be able to have an effective dive team that actually produces results. Okay, that's everything we need for that type of startup. Okay, this is a new dive team, doesn't exist. We're trying to get the funding. Hey, we're going to interrupt the show for a second to let you know that if you need help as a dive team, if you are trying to get certain pieces of your team moving or some policies or procedures in place and you just need help, you need someone to coach you through the process, then I want to tell you about srdiving.com/help. That's srdiving.com/help, where you can find out more information about our consulting services through Special Response Diving International. We've got coaches that are ready to just be able to help you work through some of the problems that you may be facing with your dive team. If it comes to worrying about funding or if it's equipment or anything else that you might face, you can go to srdiving.com/help, and we are there to be able to help and coach you through whatever challenge you may face. Now, back to the show. All right, so let's talk about an existing dive team. What can that team do if you already have something going on? There's 2 reasons you're going to need to talk to the leadership. Number 1, they're about to cut the dive team. They're like, you know what? We don't have the funding. We don't have the justification. We don't have the, whatever. They're just going to cut it. That's typically what happens. Number 2 is a leadership change. And this one is a little bit, you have to be a little more diplomatic, but it's the same. How you're going to go about it is the same. The first part, if you're just going to have budget cuts, is go back to like you're starting the dive team. Okay, instead of just cutting the team as a whole because we know we have this need, why don't we do X, Y, and Z? Take a look. You're kind of doing an internal audit and an overhaul on your necessary pieces of that team to see what needs to stay and what needs to go. Everybody's first knee-jerk reaction when you're having some budget constraints in a department is to just cut the team. Well, we're going to cut all specialized units. Well, why don't we just take a breath, take a step back and say, what if we could do this better? Because here's your 2 options. One, they're going to either cut the team and you have nothing, or you're going to cut back on the team and you have something. And a lot of people are like, well, we want everything or nothing. Well, don't do that because now you don't serve your community. What you need to have is trim the fat. This is a moment where you're just cutting off all the dead branches. You're cutting out the things that are unnecessary. If you're on that PACE system where you're saying we're going to give a bump in pay just because you have the certification, don't do that. Just change it up to where you're saying let's actually reward the people who are doing the work. If you're not in the water and you're on a dive team and you haven't been in the water except for one training dive every 12 months, get them off the team. They have no business being there. You need to put the people on the team that are actually going to get it in the water. They're going to rotate through the responsibilities of doing the work. So that's an easy way to cut back on budgetary constraints, is to be able to give them other solutions. Even if you don't have budgetary constraints, it's a great exercise to go through, write this out as if you would. Put it in your bag file and then say, hey, we're good. We've got the funding. We maybe could make some changes here or there. But if they do that, we're ready to go. That's an insurance policy right there. But if you have somebody who's making a leadership change, a new police chief, a new director, a new battalion fire chief, whoever is leading your team or leading your department, you might need to start to do what we were talking about at the beginning with a new team. Invite them in. You've got to have the heart of a teacher. You have to invite them in to the system, to the scenario, to the story, to the life. You've got to induct them into this and say, yeah, you're part of us now. I'm not saying like full, trial by fire, throw them in the deep end, pun intended, but you do need to put them around the water, near the water, maybe in the water, let them see what it's like, and then show the value. If you have stories, this is something I wish more departments did. Not just departments, dive teams across the country. Follow up on the success of what you've done. If you have gone out and you have performed a recovery or of a drowning victim, of a murder investigation, if you've performed the recovery for some other department and there's any type of gratitude, you need to document that, because those are the stories that are going to justify why you exist. And that people don't do that. I have no idea why. I mean, a lot of people will have that in their brain, but as we've talked about and we'll talk about in the future, generational training, people aren't leading that dive team forever, and those stories leave with them. And so you need to have a team documentation where, hey, this team over the years has done X, Y, and Z, regardless of who's been here. That right there is gold when you have leadership change. Hey, I want to welcome you to your new position as the mayor, as the chief, whoever. I want to thank you for what you're going to do in this department and what you're going to do in the support for us, because we know the value of this community. By the way, here's a short little binder of stories of how we've helped the community over the past X amount of years. Give that to them as a welcome gift to their new role, and say, hey, we'd love to also schedule a time. We know you're busy. You're taking on a lot of responsibility, but over the next year, we'd love to schedule something for you to come out with us on a training day and see what we do. So you know that when you were talking about budgets, why this matters. Use bold, forward-moving language like that. You've got to get out there. I don't know. If you're on a department, I doubt that many people are going to come up to them with that heart of a teacher and say something like that. They're probably going to be like, hey, buddy, pal, we want this new thing, and the last guy didn't give it to us, so what can we do? Everybody's trying to play the politics. Screw the politics. Go in and say, hey, we just want you to know what we do and why it matters, and, your decisions affect the community. So what can we do to equip you to do it better? That is going to change the entire viewpoint of the new leadership on your team. And that's how your entire team needs to rally around this. Whether you hate the person, love the person, doesn't matter, because they are going to ultimately have that axe that's going to chop off the head of your team. And that's some of the problems that people are running into around the country that we've noticed, that we've counseled and coached and consulted with. And it's a shame, because it's really not a complicated process to start a dive team. It's really not a complicated system to maintain. It's just everybody gets too big for their britches, in a sense. They're too, I'm going to throw out all my Southern terms from where I grew up, but they're getting all they're eating with their eyes. And when they start getting money in or a budget and they're buying all this stuff they don't need, they probably got a dive locker that's full of crap and it's falling apart. It's dry rotting. You got wetsuits 3 wetsuits per person. Like, you got to get that stuff out. And you got to be able to show when somebody walks in, oh, wow, they do it right. They do it well. They're really on top of it. They care about it. They care about the community. You are teaching them why you need to exist. Well, those are some thoughts on how you can talk to the leadership in your team, some methods you could use to equip yourself to kind of create some insurance policies. And the best way to do this is with your team. If you're the dive team leader, take this episode, play it back for your team, and start to brainstorm and talk about how can we talk to our leadership? How can we invite our leadership? If you've never done it, do it. If you've never had leadership a part of your process, come out to a training day, bring them out. And I mean like everybody, bring the whole executive staff out and say, hey, we just want to show you what we do. We'd love to get you in the pool and let you breathe off of some scuba equipment for a little bit. We want you to kind of feel what we feel. Here, now swim around the pool after breathing off of scuba equipment for 30 minutes. I'll hold your hand, but we're going to take your mask off. Like this is basic scuba stuff that you don't have to be an instructor. You don't have to, you're getting them in a very controlled, safe environment, but they're going, wow, that's a whole heck of a lot of stress. I didn't realize that I didn't want in my life. And these people are doing it all the time, and they're doing it willingly, and they're doing it for the benefit of our community. That right there is going to entirely change the relationship between a dive team and the leadership. Well, I hope these are some techniques and some methods that you'll be able to apply with your team, to apply with your leadership. And I really hope that this episode, it will give you some practical tools to be able to equip your team better and equip your relationship with your leadership in a much more productive way that's going to serve your communities. Well, thank you for listening to the Special Response Diver podcast, this bonus episode on how to talk to the leadership over you and be able to get the things you need for your dive team, whether you're starting, whether you've existed. But I just want to remind you that you're the ones who've got to get out there and do it. You've got to do the searches. You've got to do the recoveries. We can't do it for you. But we can give you this kind of content and this kind of information to be able to help equip you better. If you found this beneficial to you, I'd love for you to help us out and share this episode on whatever streaming platform or wherever you consume your podcast content. Then just share that out. It helps us. It helps us get more known, and more departments can hear it, more dive teams can see it, and it helps our communities that we all serve in the great United States of America. Until next time.